Hi, welcome back to Dungeon and Dyslexia. Today I've got another interview with, I'm going to say, probably the biggest rising star in the independent ShadowDark world, Greg Christopher, which probably most people will know as Chubby Funster. Welcome to the channel.
Hey, it's great to be here. I've been enjoying your reviews.
And I've been deeply enjoying your books. It's one of those that I say in the short time I've been on YouTube that I didn't really realize how much great stuff was on Drive Through RPG. And I was put on to you. I can't remember. I couldn't actually find the comment. It was one of my subscribers who initially said to me, have you looked at? I think it was Shadow
Shadow
Sun.
Sun, yeah,
Was the very
probably.
first one. But anyway, before we get into that, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I've been going by Chubby Funster for over 10 years now, but I started really writing role-playing games back in around 2010, and there's kind of the 10,000 hour rule that people talk about and share around about how you got to do something for a while before you really get good at it, and that is really true. You got to spend a lot of time in the weeds. And in the early years, I wrote a lot of free role-playing games so that I could get people to give me permission to use their artwork, right? And so I have layout design background professionally, so I was like, oh, I can get all this great color artwork and put it in. And so it's been giving me, for years, a chance to play around with really nice art and work on my writing skills. And then over time, I started transitioning over to writing stuff where I actually charged money for it. A lot of times, people don't respect it if they don't pay for it. There's that principle in play, and so started moving. Ambition and Avarice One was my first kind of real chassis that I had as a paid product, and as I kept moving forward, I'd make some money on drive-through. I'd pour that back into stock art purchases, and then just keep building up a big reservoir of black and white line art stock, and it's just keep moving that forward. So I think people always perceive stuff as an overnight success because that's when they hear about it, and the people that are doing it. This is true for Kelsey. It's true for a lot of other people in the hobby. They spend a long time just working on their craft,
Yeah.
and that's definitely been the path that I've followed into this.
Yeah, I think I stumbled across something with Jimmy Carr the other day, and he was saying, I don't know, you probably know who Jimmy Carr is. He's big enough to be in America, the comedian.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah. And he says people are, they're jealous of what you've got, not how you've got there.
that's
And
right.
I think there's definitely that, Chelsea, like you're saying about, Chelsea. Kelsey, sorry, it's because we were talking about it last night on the live sort of the Shadow Dark giveaway that we did. And there's all this other background to her and you and everyone else on Drive Through RPG that's been grafting away to get to where you are now. And people just think you can write a book, stick it on Drive Through RPG, and everyone's going to buy it. Which
Yeah,
clearly,
that is not how it works, folks. That
no,
is not how it works.
no,
Uh, yeah, but I have a 14-year-old son that's very interested in role-playing games and what I do, and he, I think, really benefits from seeing that it's not just you sit down and poof, something is created.
yeah,
You have to sit down and chip away and write things. I use the example. I use this example a lot. Like, it's easy to sit down and write all the stuff you're passionate about. It's very hard to sit down and write a unique description of a crossbow, or some kind of
yes,
mundane item like that. But you have to write it. You can't just put crossbow, no description. You have to put something there, and it's working through those grindy moments that makes it useful. Stephen King has a quote: "A writer writes." Like, that's the hard part. Like, it involves actually sitting there and writing. It's not just, oh, I had some great ideas, I'm going to jot those down. although that's an important part of the process. But it's actually spending the time to get it into a format that speaks to other people that's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to quote Stephen King now, and the thing I really liked about him was when he created Richard Bachman, which was that whole, do people buy my books because I write it, or am I actually a talented writer?
Yeah.
And then he
Um,
obviously created a series of books in a pen name, didn't he? That no one knew was him, and that made
yeah.
equal amount of money. So it's a skill, and as someone that's dyslexic, the thing I always find amazing when I started doing a lot of research into dyslexia, when I started this channel as well, I thought, I've kind of got to do my research if I'm going to name the channel around it. And I think it's one thing we humans take for granted is the ability to read and write, but we equally forget that it's only really been 100 years since most people can read and write. Because you go back to 2 centuries ago, so that like the 1900s, there was about only 3 or 4% of people read and write in the whole of the world. It was like the really educated people. Most people didn't go to school. So it's a really modern thing, this ability for everyone to read and write. And we haven't had thousands of years of evolution of it either. And also we have different languages and different pronunciations and different dialects. So if you're then going to create a medium for, like you do, you're creating a medium for the whole world because you're trying to market to everybody out there. It's
Yeah.
incredibly difficult to sort of get people on board.
And there's a great point. There's a lot of opportunities to educate people about that kind of stuff that movies and video games just let walk right by. I really love the video game Kingdom Come Deliverance, and one of the great things about it is that your character is the son of a blacksmith. He cannot read and write.
Hmm.
And there's a point in the game where you have to decide that you want to read. You have to go to a scribe and take lessons from him and spend time in the game learning how to read. And it gives you um, a book to like practice on.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, I haven't played this in almost over a year now, so forgive me if I'm a little bit off on this, but it'll give you the text, and as you get better, it replaces the Latin words with English. So at first, you're trying to read this text, and like half of the words are in English, and half of the words are in Latin, and even as a modern reader, it's hard to figure out what the hell this book is saying. And you
Yeah.
have to like read it and answer the guy's questions about the story and bring it out until your character learns to read. Like reading is not some natural thing that humans are born knowing how
No,
to do.
no, it's not
Yeah,
like walking. We can. You live a baby long enough, it will naturally stand up, and well,
that's
most babies will naturally
that's
stand
right.
up and
Yeah.
walk. I've got to play that. I started playing it, and I can't remember what happened, but it's quite a
It's
deep
very
game.
challenging,
It's
yes.
yeah to get going. As much of that is that any sort of inspired you to write fantasy, or did
Well,
you sort of as in where did you discover the sort of love
I
of fantasy?
I
Because I'm
I played video games before I learned how to play role-playing games, I think.
right.
I was playing Super Nintendo when I was 9 or 10. But there's definitely a cross-pollination that goes on with video games because um, I you see the way that they try to represent something in a video game, and sometimes it gives you an insight into reflecting it back onto how you would do it in a role-playing game. And the ShadowRim is a great example of that. That Skyrim has this fantastic alchemical system that people love. All these alchemical ingredients, all the way that it works. And yeah, I sat down and thought, yeah, how can we adapt this to tabletop? And I was like, well, if people are going to have these first, second, third, fourth order effects like in Skyrim, like how would they discover that? And you try to come up with a way to, okay, like if you taste it, like in Skyrim, you get a
Mhm.
chance to figure it out. And
Yeah.
then I was like, but if I put in the book what they do, then people don't need to taste it. They can just flip a couple pages in the book and they'll see what it is. So then I was like, okay, we have to randomly be generating this each time. Yeah, like you're rolling off this table for every alchemical ingredient. So when you start the game, the GM doesn't even know what any particular alchemical ingredient will do. And you could very well pick up the first three alchemical ingredients that you find, and they all have the same effect. And then you can make some incredible potion, or they might be totally different effects, and you can't make anything. Like it's all random. And that the number one comment I get back on ShadowRim is people saying, I really like how it represents the systems in the video game.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So that's what I mean. Like this cross pollinate, you want to create the same feel without it being the exact same system.
yeah, yeah. I've got. Can you see my screen? Because I know
Oh
you're on
yeah,
a
yeah,
hot.
I can.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Good. Just for everyone else, like just Greg's on holiday and didn't take his webcam with him, so hence the reason he's
No
got no
worries.
face. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's. So I think I discussed it in my review. Was I got the impression that if I played this with one set of friends, and then you sort of stop the campaign or you start a campaign with another set of friends, whatever you find in the world is going to be completely different in both sets of games
That's right.
because you are randomly generating. So for here, depending on what effects you get, will determine what's going to go. And then obviously you've got the four levels of effect as well for what it is. It's I can't even get my head round. You go from computer game to mechanics really well to then convert that onto a book. So I again, I covered it in my video that this is Skyrim, Morrowind, and all these games that have existed for a long time for me. I played Morrowind back in it was about 92, I think 93, which was the very first one because I'm playing at university.
Yeah.
Um,
I played
and
it. I love the hell out of that game. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and obviously Skyrim just really, I think Skyrim is like the pinnacle of where they are so far. But we've all played and tried to replicate, and lots of people have tried to write a book that replicates the game really well. And this was by far the first one. And I think that is partly backed by Shadow Dark being so easy to play that again we were talking about last night.
I would agree. Yeah.
I wanted to hate Shadow Dark because everyone loved it, and I found myself falling in love with the game because it's so simple that, and it's in essence it's too simple, but it means you can probably attach stuff to it really simply.
Well, one of the things I was just thinking about, if you flip forward to some of the encounter tables, one of the things that I did was roll random things into the campaign as encounters. So, like if you look at entry 6768 on this caldera, right, there's a rune stone. These are like the standing stones in Skyrim.
Yeah,
I put them in as random encounters. So you can't know where to go to get this standing stone. And if you go out there, you can lose it. Like you find it in a random encounter. You're like, okay, I'm going to come back here. But navigating hex crawls is not a certain thing. If you say, I'm going to head back to that runestone, that's going to be a challenge to find it again. So that way, if everybody started the game knowing where all the runestones were, and all you got to do is just go there and you can touch it and get a magic power, they would be exploiting that. So you have to hide it in a random encounter. You have to hide it in places like that. And you see, as I'm sure you know, in Terra Invictus, there's all kinds of locations that are hidden in the game in random encounter tables. So you're only going to find this monastery or this temple or whatever if you find the random encounter. So I think that's a really useful way of there's a feeling, I think everybody who plays a lot of video games has said this. I wish I could go back and play it again without having seen it, right? And
yeah,
and experience that for the first time. And I think with random encounter tables, with the randomization effects you have on tabletop, you can do that. You can experience it for the first time in a lot of ways, even though you've already played it.
yeah, yeah. Because you
Yeah.
do. I'll just keep going through and like the settlements as well. I was amazed how you've taken the settlements because obviously the map is different, but very much the same. For I'm guessing for legal reasons.
Yes,
Yeah,
for legal reasons.
makes
Other,
sense.
one
Um,
of the things with ShadowSun is it was the first one where I had I didn't want to fly too close to the sun.
Yeah.
No pun intended. I didn't want wizards to come after me and say this is too close to being Shadow Sun. So I made sure that I really emphasized the ways that it was different.
Yeah.
You know, I focus. I didn't name anything so that there would be any conflict. I tried to include some things that are not Shadow Sun in terms of monsters and magical effects and character design stuff, so that nobody could say, "Oh, you just straight up ripped off Dark Sun." But I've seen a lot of people in the Shadow Sun or in the Shadow Dark community on Facebook post where they've been playing Dark Sun and just using these stats for Shadow Sun so that they don't have to go through get a lot of people don't want to go back to Thaco and second edition, and they don't want to play Dark Sun fourth edition because they don't like fourth edition D&D or whatever. So they've been using this as the mechanical basis. And if you want to call Hawkfolk Aarakocra and you want to call Mantis folk Thrykean, that's up to you. It's not up to, it doesn't matter to me. I'm just
Just
giving
don't
you the
do it.
template. Yeah,
Don't put it in
I
writing.
can't do it in writing. I
Yeah.
can't do it in writing.
Yeah.
Um,
So I've
although I
got
did slip Aarakocra in a couple things, and so far I haven't had anybody call me on it. So I'm trying to move the ball down the field a little bit at a time.
Yeah, because wizards are quite harsh on their litigation, aren't they?
That's right. Yeah.
I'm probably going to get a strike for saying that, to be honest. I have got a question which on my Dark Sun, because obviously the big thing for me when I read through this, and I kept it out of the review because I think what you've done here is absolutely wonderful. And if you're not sure, if you're new to this, so Shadow Sun is based on Dark Sun. Dark Sun was a campaign set in by TSR, wasn't it? It was actually originally
Yeah.
for second edition Dungeons and Dragons, which is a brutal, harsh, dry, arid, post-apocalyptic, ran by it was the Dragon Kings, wasn't it? If I remember, Sorcerer
Sorcerer
Kings,
Kings.
Sorcerer Kings. But so one of the famous things that really divided the community, because this was my first part of Dungeons and Dragons, was dwarfs having no hair.
Our
Uh,
mole. Yeah. The
uh,
half dwarfs.
yes, yeah. Well, even the basic dwarfs had no hair, didn't they?
I don't
I
think
think.
so. I think there's
Okay,
some like top knots and some
maybe, but
some
yeah,
beards. Yeah.
but yeah,
I've
but the,
seen some in the art. Yeah.
okay, yeah. So there's no Maul and there's no half giant. And was that a decision because of the potential for
But yeah, that was, and there's also I was trying to this was at a time when I actually wrote the vast majority of Shadow Sun. I think there was some edits that I added a few sections later in the book. After it's like I had launched the PDF and then I made updates to the PDF before I went full POD.
yeah.
And once you go POD, you can't really update the PDF anymore.
Right,
Um,
okay.
but I had made it, all of this was being done before the Kickstarter for Shadow Dark even closed.
Right,
So
okay.
I only had the quick start rules for the vast majority of this writing, and I was trying to keep it as aligned as I could to Kelsey's four classes,
Right.
six, a simple model rather than build it. Because you could have built out tons of stuff for choices. Dark Sun has so many choices. It's
Yeah,
hard to,
cause it's
when
still
you're
got halflings and
summarizing it to
variety of the
people.
stuff as
Yeah.
well, and half elves as well. I hadn't actually twigged that. Yeah, you are 4 and 6, aren't you? Well, 6 and 4.
Yeah. Um,
No, five, one, two,
yeah.
three.
I think there's five,
There's
actually. Yeah,
five. Yeah,
five
there's
classes. Yeah.
five classes. But yeah, I hadn't
But
twigged
yeah,
that.
I wanted to stick close to that vision. I did, because I wanted people to be like, it's very similar to that, but in Dark Sun. And I'm actually working on right now a I was going to call it Burnt Scrolls, like Kelsey's Curse Scrolls, but she had a talk with me and was like, it's really kind of him and close to my IP. And I,
Was it her
I,
or was it her
yeah,
legal team?
she actually said in multiple locations that she wishes she didn't have to do this, but that
Yeah.
legal people are saying you have to go out and protect your IP, which is totally true.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You do
yeah.
have to do that. And Kelsey and I have a great relationship. So I was no problem at all. I'm totally happy to change it. So they're going to be called Dune Wanderer instead like the Wanderer's Journal. You can't call it Wanderer's Journal either because that's actually a product that they made. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so I'm calling it a like Dune Wanderer 1, Dune Wanderer 2. I have a friend of mine, Matt Jackson, who does maps. He's making a custom map of there's a location in the original in ShadowSun where this giant stone golem has fallen down and was killed, and it was is listed in the original book as a potential adventure location. And so Matt's drawn out a map of the interior of the golem that has now been taken over by an ant colony, a giant ant colony. And so they've got all these mutations that they've been warped by the heart of the golem that's still there that pulses with magical energy. And that's going to be the dungeon. And then I've cut a part of the world map to make kind of the overland map that comes with a curse scroll, similar style to what Kelsey did, and then it's adding like a curse scroll. It's adding new ancestry options, new class options, new rules. And when Kelsey launched the Western Reaches Kickstarter, it occurred to me that this would actually be a good way of creating a expanded Shadow Sun because I was for a while I was like, well, once you have the book out there, if you make updates to it, now what people have is out of date. I don't want to do that. But if I release a series of these zines, basically, and then there's a kind of a combined product that includes all of them and updates Shadow Sun and creates kind of a new thing for people to move forward with, that was kind of my model. So I'm adding a half dwarf and I'm adding a half giant.
Oh, what are they
As
called?
um,
I
I
just
think I don't have it up right now, but there's an island in the original book called Dur, D-U-R,
yes.
and I said it's the only place with these. I mentioned that there were half dwarves there that were kind of outcast, and so they're being called Dur, which is not Mull, but it's close.
Mhm.
And then I was just going to call the half giants Goliaths because
Nice.
it's a common word.
Yeah.
People know exactly what you mean when you say it, and you can't copyright you can't copyright characters from the Bible. So good luck with that. So so there's that kind of openness there, and then I'm adding a gladiator class and a enforcer class, which are both kind of area control, stunning, capturing people type classes. The enforcer is more of like a police unit for the Mage Kings, and the gladiator is, obviously, fighting and my gladiator class is going to be really focused on brawling and wrestling and hand to hand. And then also like nets, like a Roman gladiator,
Yeah.
kind of subduing people. Because the idea is you want to be non-lethal. You want to survive to the next fight, but put on a good show. So there's that kind of thing. And Kelsey has a pit fighter class that's in, I think it's the second curse scroll, and I do things. I try to be like, how can I make it so it's really different from this pit fighter class, but still in the same thematic vein.
Yeah.
You could kind of use these classes even with ShadowDark in some respects if you wanted to, because they're not psionic classes. Um, Although the enforcer does have as a kind of defensive ability a very strong resistance to psionics, so that if they're trying to like subdue you, you can't fight back with psionics very effectively. Um, that kind of thing. And so I'm adding some new weapons. I'm adding some rules, expanded rules on mounts that are kind of based on Kelsey's rules on mounts. So like as she comes out with ways of doing things that people like and become popularized, I'm trying to make sure it conforms to some degree so that people who are used to running it in ShadowDark will just easily be able to switch it over to mine. But I do make adjustments, like in my mounts require a lot more water than if you're in ShadowDark's overland system. So that kind of thing. So it's not, it's not copying, it's just providing a, like with everything for me, a familiar but different interaction with the system.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. It's really good that you stay that close because it's. I'm gonna sort of compare this to. I was a big Star Wars fan. I read all the books when Lucas used to sort of sign off all the expanded universe stuff. So
Yep.
so it seems like Kelsey is very much doing that, and you're, excuse me, sorry, working backwards with Kelsey to keep it compatible, if that makes sense. Because I think that going forward, we are just going to see people going that there'll be that element where we were talking about it last night that I think Shadow Dark and potentially Mortborg, however you want to pronounce it, I know it's not that when you do it
I,
properly, but
yeah,
uh,
I don't know how to pronounce it. Yeah.
yeah, but these will become the two dominant sort of the ways that we play games, I think, for the next couple of years, and then obviously the next thing, like fifth edition, sort of took over.
Yep.
Um, and we are just going to see people pulling, going right. Okay, well, this is the campaign, so they're going to be playing like Terra Victus, or something along those lines. And I go, actually, I want to bring in this, and most DMs are just going to go, do you know what? Just go with it. If that's the character, that's the way I play games. If it's out there and it's compatible, just bring it in, play it. If it makes you happy, I'd rather you be
Yeah.
happy in my game, playing what you want to play, and I'll just adapt it. As long as it's
I've
not idiotic, if you know what I mean.
I've seen people having a discussion about my player's companion on the Facebook group, and Kelsey's Facebook group is fantastic. Anybody watching this should definitely join up Shadow Dark official Facebook group. And they've been talking about like, maybe I feel like that, this is their voice. Like I feel like this particular class might be overpowered or this one is underpowered. Like I think you said like you thought the Mariner was underpowered a little bit because it requires you to have water, whatever.
Yeah,
Um, but I've
but at
seen people
climbing,
say,
I
well,
remember.
yeah, their solution was just saying, well, what I've seen two or three people say this. They'll give the book to their players and they'll say, you can only play each of these classes once. So if you play a monk and you die, you can't pick
Ooh.
monk again. You have to pick another one of them. So that way, even if it is overpowered, in their, particular opinion, you die in Shadow Dark, and then it's over. So even if you were an archer and you thought archers were a little bit too powerful, eventually you're gonna die, and then
Yeah,
you can come back as an enchanter or a gladiator or whatever. And I think that's a good solution. Kelsey's base four classes, you know, obviously not her invention. Everybody knows these base four classes. Um, it's hard to move away from that and be perfectly balanced. And it's also impossible to move away from it and have everybody perceive that it's balanced. I've had
yeah.
tons of people come to me and say, well, I think this class is overpowered. And I'm like, well, have you played it? And they go, no. And I'm like, well, then it's just your opinion that you think it's going to be overpowered. If you really thought it'd be overpowered, that's what you'd pick immediately
Yeah,
and start playing it. Like if you go to the Valkyrie real quick. So I've had some
that's one
people
of my
come to me.
favorites.
Yeah, I love this class. I've had a few people tell me they think it's overpowered because there's not like a limit on the number of times per day, like if you, that you could get a luck token back, or the amount of ways that you can use the ravens and all this stuff. And I'm like, if you actually play the game, you'll realize it's not very often that you're going to use a luck token to deliver a killing blow to somebody.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're going to use your luck token and then make the roll. And even on the re-roll, you're going to miss or you're not going to deal enough damage and you're not going to kill the guy. So the amount of times where it actually happens that you use the luck token, kill the guy, get the luck token back is nowhere near as often as somebody imagines it is when they're reading it. So they read the class and they imagine all these things happening that then when you actually play the game, it doesn't happen enough to where it to be an overpowered
Yeah.
thing.
But even if it is, so what? I have a real pick any game, and none of the races, none of the classes are going to be equally balanced. That they just don't. And people always go, "Oh, fifth edition." Oh, but it's not. If you tried playing a monk and you know standing up against next to a cleric, that, but they're taking a lot of time one aspect of the game, which is combat, and
That's right. Yeah.
if your whole life of role playing is around combat and you think that I'm going to get a lot of hate for this comment, but to me, there's a lot more to a character. I'm going to try and diplomat myself now. I've got my wife in my head going, don't say it that way. That you kind of just got, there's a lot more to a game. And yes, there are characters out there that can absolutely destroy things. It's like archers. In general, I think archer character classes are completely overpowered to everything else because they can stand at the back. They can normally kill most things before anything gets to it.
Yep.
Now, that is incredibly overpowered if you don't close the distance on the archer. If you go and stand next to the archer, it hasn't got a lot of power because it normally
That's
can't
right.
even shoot. So it's yes, there are going to be things that are very good at one or two things, but a good games master or a good player will then have to come up with an inventive way to stop it from happening. And I think that is part of the puzzle and the fun of role playing.
Yeah, I have a good friend who's a former NYPD police officer. Eric Tenkar runs Tenkar's Tavern. It's a big old school blog and YouTube channel and stuff now. But I knew him back when he was a little pup,
Yeah,
and before he got anywhere near as widespread as he is. And we talk about some stuff and about police work, and he said, well, have you seen these videos? And he was the first person I think who shared this video to me of somebody where there's a guy with a knife, and the police officer has to draw their gun before the person with the knife can close the distance. And the 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 range that you think you would need is woefully inadequate. Like if the person already has their knife out, the speed at which you can draw your gun and shoot, they can move almost 50 feet. I think it's like, I
yeah,
mean, like it's really fast at fully running. You have to actually get the gun out of your clipped holster, aim it, fire it. It it's hard, and so people sit at home watching, Jason Bourne on TV, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I could do that." Like no, 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 you cannot. If somebody with a knife is within 25 feet, you're dead.
yeah,
Like that's
yeah,
yeah. And so that people just have these warped ideas about how things work from watching TV or just imagining shit in their head that just isn't true.
yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
One of my favorite TV series is Justified, and there aren't
I
many
love
TV
that
series
show.
I've watched from. And you've got the one character that's obsessed with the 22-foot rule, isn't it? With his knife.
What
And he's like every time he goes to confront anyone with a gun, he's like trying to work out where he needs to
yeah.
stand to run down a knife. So I'm guessing not that that's where that theory comes from, but it's obviously an
Oh,
active
it's definitely
theory.
a real police training
Yeah,
thing because I've seen the videos that where they have a guy standing there and they're like, see if you can draw your knife or draw your gun before this guy can close the distance, and most people can't do it. It's very, very hard.
no, no, no. Especially when you've got someone
You're
running at you
freaking
with a
out in
knife.
your head.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully, it's something I'm never going to get into that situation. While we're on the player's companion, one thing that came up in the comments when I did the video of this, and I meant to go back and look at this, was are the original six classes, or so ancestries, actually in this book?
Um, it's been a long time since I wrote it, but I think that they are represented in some like one of the elves is the same
Right, yeah,
elf
yeah.
ancestry as before. I want to say that's true, but I can't. I just can't remember. Like maybe the hill dwarf is the dwarf from from ShadowDark's core product. Um, I didn't want there to be people flipping between two different books to make choices of it,
Yeah.
so that's why like I included human and stuff like that. So that's probably it. But like I said,
I think
once
it is. So
yeah.
I just need to. I found most of them, but so I needed to go. So we've looked at the player's guide. So the player's guide is as just as it sounds. It's hundreds of different more ancestries, hundreds of thousands of classes, and a absolute ton of equipment, which is say all absolutely merges in. But my favourite out of these two was I thought it was going to be the player's guide, but the Games Master's Companion is well, yeah, well, I think I said in my video, you can use this for any other, especially fantasy game, and I think you could pretty much use this for a lot of, even other genres as well.
Yeah, I've had people tell me that they just use it with others, that not even just with ShadowDark, just with anything that they're playing. I think one of the big innovations that ShadowDark has, it's easy to focus on the kind of player side stuff, but one of the big innovations is the randomization system for making dungeons and for making settlements
Yes.
and coming up with just stuff on the fly without having to have it, predetermined. Oh, there's a trap here. I'm just going to roll off a table, and that's what the trap is. Having, the ability. I mean, we've had that kind of ability with Treasure for a long, long time. And there are other products where people have put it together. Like with many things, it's not that Kelsey necessarily invented a particular thing new. It's that she combined it, presented it, did something in a way that really resonates with people better. Um, and so if you if you just take that and continue to expand it, that's what I do. You start to really come to appreciate that how much of a big leap forward it is just in how she integrated it into the game. And having the ability to just make a random dungeon, super useful. One of the things that I have in Terra Invictus is a bunch of locations where I'm like, just build out your own dungeon here. You commented on that in your review,
Yeah.
and I don't have to make a dungeon map and all that stuff. You can just randomly roll it up, and then that's what's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope this doesn't get back to Kelsey. Because I thought the Shadow Dark rules for designing hex crawling and the sort of dungeon stuff she did was really good. And then you did yours, and you then look back and go, it's quite wanting. It's not wanting at all. It's just that what you've done is so much is is better the right thing to, well it is better, and
I find it hard to argue with your position.
it's but it is one of those things is when it exists on its own, Shadow Dark, creating dungeons, doing the hex crawling is really good, like you say. But your book just takes it up to such a more interesting level for players, and especially the dungeon master, because we're the people that get bored by putting the same sort of encounters. Players in general, I find over the years, don't care as much. If they might go, "Oh, goblins again," but as long as the area you're fighting the goblins is different for them. But from a games master's point of view, you kind of want everything to be unique in every sort of encounter. And like you say, when we will get to this, which is this is your big epic original campaign. We'll come on to that in a second. But yeah, I really do love what you've done, and so I can take this. I can take this as Castles and Crusades, fifth edition. So many other things. We all get it. Where again, I might have said it in my video. I'm not sure. Where someone doesn't turn up for the night, and and you're like, oh, great, last minute letdown. You go, do you know what? I'm just going to throw you in a dungeon. It wasn't part of the main campaign.
Yep.
let's just have a dungeon and just go with it.
I think we've all been there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, let's do this thing that's appropriate for three players instead of five,
yeah.
because a couple people are out.
But even this is actually what I got to it by accident. One of my favorite tables in the book, NPC qualities, because again as a games master, I'm not. Uh, I'm in the fortunate position with two of my groups. We have, apart from one guy, we all want to run games all the time. So, and most groups don't have this. Most groups have one games master. So we're always fighting for things. But one thing I lack on is descriptions and trying to give my NPCs motivation or something unique. I end up with something stupid like, oh, they got sausage fingers, and then that just becomes a joke. Or do you know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
and it's and then players just go, oh, we want to go and see that weird sausage fingers man. You're like, no, that's not the point. He's a really important NPC. But this giving what's this 60 different options, well, it's not.
It's not really.
It's
It's
thousands.
actually, yeah,
It's tens
it's
of thousands once you do it across the board.
20 factorial is really
Yeah,
what it is, I think. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's
So
just
you
brilliant.
have, yeah, and that was one of the things that I think she really pushed. There's a lot of charts in the base book where you're rolling multiple times for different columns
Yeah,
and creating unique combinations of things. And I think that's really a cool way of doing it.
yeah. And it
Um,
reminds me actually the pubs as well. The pub name and then the theme
yeah,
of the pub, which we all have this. You start in a tavern and someone will go, What's the tavern called?" And you're like, "Great, thanks."
color animal inn.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
it's called. Yes.
yeah. And what's the pub smell of? And you're like, roasting fire. Oh, again, is it?
Yes.
you know, what are they doing? Oh, they're wrestling. Yes, naked wrestling with men. Like it?
Yeah.
So yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
it's hard
It's
to come
brilliant.
up with that stuff on the fly.
Yeah,
And that was one of the th I really, you know, I like that you can just pull up a chart and get an answer. And we also have to think about it from the perspective not just of us as veterans, but as somebody who's trying to do this for the first time. I forget who it was, but I was watching a YouTube video recently and somebody said it's underappreciated the innovations on the game master side of making it easy for the game master, which a
yes,
lot of games do not even put an ounce of consideration into. And so much of Shadow Dark is to make it easy for the game master to run it. And
definitely.
that's a big, huge thing. I ran Curse and Scroll 3 for my guys. So I have a Saturday night group that's every week. And we had some time where we weren't going to have anybody who had anything to run. We had a guy who had been running Shadow Dark who wanted to kind of go back to the drawing board on some ideas. And so I ran the Curse Scroll 3, and all I did was pull up a map from the internet. I put it up on Roll20, and then I created icons for stuff. So I had an icon of just trap. I had an icon of treasure 0 to 3. I had an icon, and as they moved around on the VTT, they would just get into a room, and then I just randomly determine what it was in that moment. I didn't have to prep anything for it. I didn't have to, I
Yeah,
was making the thing as they explored it.
yeah, yeah.
And that was really fun.
And the best tables in this, because I'm that sort of DM. These
The curses.
your curse tables, because I've done it. Again, I think I may have touched on it. I'm quite prone to if my players are being a git and trying to rip off a shopkeeper, I will substitute that magic item for a cursed item, and not tell them. They'll play it as the magical item they think it is right until the combat starts, and then they find out it's not actually the item they thought it was. And it's a good way of teaching people a lesson. Think when they think they're smart, but also it's old school. I remember there was an awful lot of Dungeons and Dragons adventures, and because when we played in the sort of 80s and 90s, we weren't allowed to tell people what the magic items were. It was more sort of yeah,
Experimentation.
yeah,
Yep.
and discovery, wasn't it? You know, you had to spend time with or a spell, and I'm trying to do that, and especially do that with a cursed item. And now my players get all panicky. They go, "Oh, is there any more powers in it?" And I'll go, "Yeah, there's something else, but you haven't managed to work it out." And they go, "It's cursed, isn't it? I'm going to leave it on the floor." And I'm like, "You leave it there. That's absolutely fine because that is a +5 magical sword that you're now going to leave because
Yep.
you think I'm doing you bad." I'd probably come across as a really horrible games master, but
Well, you got to
life sucks
provide
like
the
that.
negative, you know.
Yeah.
It's not all the number one thing that people talk about being great about Shadow Dark is that you die. You
Yes.
know, like people need that negative pushback from the system. You can't just give players everything they want.
No.
Um, one of the things that Jordan Peterson talks about, the psychologist, about, you know, if I just gave you $10 million, you think you'd be like, oh, this will make my life great, but it'll allow you to pursue all your vices to the maximum degree. And this is what happens to people in Hollywood. You
Yep.
know, it'll let you do all this stuff that you shouldn't be doing. The constraints of the real world limit your ability to use cocaine every day. You know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah. Well,
you have to make it through. You know, you can't do it. And as soon as you have infinite money, you'll destroy yourself. So I think there's got to be some pushback, like gravity. You know, if you go to space, your bones and muscles will degenerate. You know, you got to have some pushback
yeah.
for it
Yeah.
to be enjoyable.
We have it over here, and I'm sure you have similar documentaries in America where you take national lottery winners, which is our big lottery
Oh
over
yeah,
here, and then they go and visit them in 5 years' time, and they are broker than they were before they won the 50 million, and they have nothing. You know, they've got no job, no friends. Like you say, that they tend to have some sort of addiction problems, or they're in prison.
yeah,
Because suddenly you take someone that's used to working and living on a certain amount of money, and then you give them 1,000 times that, and there's no, there's no repercussions for their bad decisions. There's no, I'm a financial advisor. I deal with this on a daily basis. Talking about passive incomes and investing money, making your money
yeah.
work for you over time, and things like that. And people still don't because there's no general education around it, especially in this country. I'd imagine America's pretty similar. It's not taught in school, so people don't grasp compound interest, and we've really moved on to something else, haven't we? It's done.
No,
Right.
I think it's good. Like that's the thing is the system that you design, whether you're talking about it from actual system design, like with the player companion and the GM companion, or whether you're talking about the content out in the field, whether
Yeah.
when you're dealing with a setting, it needs to be challenging. It needs to be surprising. You need to stumble into situations that you weren't expecting, because if you always run into situations that you're expecting, then you'll be prepared. But if all of a sudden you're fighting a monster that's more powerful than you can handle and you have to run away, then it makes you be more cautious about what you do. It makes you be more deliberate, you know. And that's enjoyable for people. And nobody wants to just fight the monsters on the schedule that they've come up with that's going to be tolerable and easy to process. You know,
Yeah.
they need that surprise, that challenge to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, and I think that's the spoiler, isn't it, from fifth edition? I think fifth edition's done some wonderful things. Advantage, disadvantage, character classes. It's brought a lot of people into the hobby, but it has created superheroes in a fantasy genre. And so yeah, and I think just coming back to Shadow Dark, and I think that's where Shadow Dark is perfect because people do die. I'm going to play a wizard. Okay, good, right? You've got at most 4 hit points. There is
Yeah.
no attack of opportunity, so monsters can freely move in and around, do
Yeah.
what they want,
Come
go where they
right
want.
up in your face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And also, it's gone dark, so now you can't even see them, and they can see
Yeah.
you. Yeah, it's good. So now we are going to talk about, I think, your amazingly epic campaign. So, the good things. I was very much in love with ShadowRim and ShadowSun, but obviously this all took a little bit of influence from another creator, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So, and this is the one. So you basically, after doing Shadow Sun and then Shadow Rim, you basically went, have you looked at my Games Master and Player Companion and Terra Invictus? I've got it right. Is that right this time?
Yep. Terra Invictus.
So, and I was like, nope. So I just went straight on Drive Through RPG, bought them, and then I was just sat glued to all three of them, and especially this, because obviously the Games Master Guide, the Player's Guide, I was like, okay, I can see where they perfectly fit in. And Shadow Dark, the big problem with Shadow Dark is really no world, no campaign setting. You know, that if book as bought, if that makes sense. You know, it's a
Yeah.
great players, Games Master, and Monster Manual, but it needs a world. And this it completely ignoring these notations that make it an incredibly easy game to solo play, which I'm still playing now. And I'm spending evenings with this where I should be reading books to do reviews, and I'm like, and I'll go, oh, just have half an hour on it, and then I get stuck in a location somewhere, and I'm like, oh, for God's sake, this stupid book, in a good way, if that makes sense,
Well,
because so
that's great to
so
hear. My son play tested this, and I would catch him up at 1 in the morning in his room, just scribbling furiously on his character sheets, running through this game. Yeah, I think it's pretty addictive.
yeah, yeah, it's you've got well, you do it. I'm gonna be quiet now, and then you talk
Yeah,
about your
well, I had originally actually written this as a setting for a game that I wrote a long time ago, Ambition and Avarice. And so, like all these gods and stuff, I had been able to tap into that. And my plan was I was just going to convert this over to ShadowDark and release it as a product. And then the more that I did it, the more I interacted with the icon system, which I had developed already. But then I was like, man, you could really use this for solo play the way that, use it as a key to how to resolve these things when you're playing it solo and also. So I ended up adding almost twice as much content as was in the original drafts, and tons of different new ideas that came out of just the conversion process. And Terra Invictus is a about, let's say, maybe a third of the land on the map is settled territory, and then the majority of it is just untamed wilderness. And so you go out there and find all kinds of stuff, and you gotta with Shadowdark, it adds even more of a equipment limitation. You only have a certain number of gear slots to carry stuff out.
yeah.
There's rules for doing all the overland movement and everything. And so it really feels like, very different from a classic OSR setting. There's a lot more pressure on the players. Yeah, there's the map. Um, and I had, made a whole world map for this. This is just a cut out of it. I actually have that up if you want me to
Yeah,
pop
yeah.
it
If
up
you know,
as a
because
share.
that's what I said in my video, and we briefly talked about this before you put the camera on. I was going, don't spoil it. You know, if I'm right on a video, let
Oh, it says I have to request.
yeah, yeah. I'm just
Yeah,
just
there we go.
allowing.
Okay.
There we go.
So this is the world map, and uh, you
Wow.
can see, yeah, so it's much bigger than just Terra Invictus. So the idea was eventually it would be able to be one coherent world that all fit together. I haven't gotten into making the second one yet. When you make a setting, you don't know how well it's going to resonate with people, So I want to, make sure that it is something that people are interested in doing and moving forward. And I've got a lot of, positive reactions. Terra Invictus is already copper. It's only been out for a month, so this, sales are moving forward. Not as good as, say a universal supplement like GM Companion, but it's still very good. And so if you look at like Tesca Arctica, that's mostly Siberia steppe type terrain that's unsettled, that's north of these countries. Patonova is more like a Scandinavian culture. Bochnia is more of a Slavic, West Slavic, like Czech, Pole type culture. And the southern part of Bochnia is in Terra Invictus, and in Tesca Arctica, you'd be kind of on the northern border of Landeron, the blue country, which is totally focused on the south. So you'd be
Yeah.
kind of at the on their frontier, and then you could, integrate in some of that new country, and then a ton of very different terrain. The most of the terrain in Terra Invictus is warm.
Mm.
Badlands or temperate. Temperate is as cold as it gets, or tropical. And so, eventually bringing in, if it got, really got it rolling, do the whole eastern continent. But yeah, I only have kind of preliminary notes on this stuff. But this is kind of the long-term plan, and I'd love to see it continue to develop. It's just I've got a lot on my plate. I'm not, I can't move everything at once, but this is kind of my long-term plan.
Yeah. Again, it's something I think we briefly talked on before we put on cameras. We're both in that point. I'd love to do this for a living, because I've got so many more books and things, and I think you're really at the same point as me, aren't you? Where, you know, loving doing this outside of our main jobs, but our main jobs pay for us to feed our kids,
That's
and
that's right.
keep the roof over our head and everything else. So
Yeah, my wife and I both work remote, and so I have, don't have a commute time. I can switch over from the end of my workday into writing, and to kind of build on your discussions of dyslexia. I am a high functioning ADD person.
okay,
There's a lot of focus on ADHD, and but ADD is a thing just by itself, and people who are not hyperactive just tend to kind of space out and live in their head and be a daydreamer.
yeah,
And so for a long time, I thought that was just my personality. And then my brother started taking medication for his same thing, and he became a lot more productive. I was like, oh, okay, well, and then I got a prescription for um, methylphenidate, which is Ritalin, basically, but recalibrated now. It's a lot better than it was when we were younger,
yeah,
and I can take just 20 milligrams of that, and I can write and focus for 4 or 5 hours on doing what I want to do. And so going from at the end of my day, I kind of have a few ideas and I jot some things down and I write a little bit. I can get to the end of my day and put in 3 or 4 hours of solid writing, really focused writing, get a ton done.
yeah,
And so that's been a big change in my life. And then I think a lot of people in the fantasy nerd hobbies could really benefit from having that, to being able to go from somebody who's like a absent-minded professor type to actually being able to get the project moved through to completion.
yeah.
And that's been a big factor in my life.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Have you got a sort of time frame? Do you think where, or is there an amount where you can make the transition, or do you think that money's too good in your main job? And I'm not sort of trying to pry
Yeah,
into that way, but
money is very good in my main job, and I still have two kids under 18.
yeah,
Um, when those things change, about 4 or 5 year time frame for me, my wife and I plan on working remote from other places than where
yeah,
we are currently. And so I want to kind of, by the time I get to that point, have enough income from this for it to be a good side support so that if I need to pull back from work or whatever, I could. Um, but there's the old saying, if you want to make a million dollars in role-playing games, start out with $2 million and lose the million. That's kind of, it's a tough hobby.
yeah,
One of the advantages that I've tried to leverage is that I use the term vertical integration. So I'm vertically integrated in that I do writing, I do the layout, I do the art direction. I do. We've got automated tools now that can do a lot of the editing. There's still some things that need to be edited. I got a professional editor to go through Terra Invictus because it's so narrative dense compared to like GM's Companion
Yeah,
is
yeah. Do
is
you want me to just
not, yeah,
share back to that a bit, if I
yeah,
can?
yeah, sure.
Um,
There we go.
Go on. Sorry, editor. Yeah,
Yep. So because I'm vertically integrated in that sense, um, the amount of money that I clear per sale is much higher. You know, if you're having to pay somebody to do your layout, if
mm,
you having to pay some, larger amount for a lot of the things that you're doing, then your take home at the end is smaller. So I'm getting a lot of return per sale. So I
yeah,
don't need a huge number of sales compared to Paizo or Wizards of the Coast or whatever. I can make a moderate number of sales and really get a lot of value out of that. That's where I'm focused. Kelsey had when she was doing her AMA video recently, she talked about how one of her goals is to create an ecosystem where people could do this as a job and be able to make a reasonable amount of money at it. Um, I think the days of writing for 10 cents a word or whatever is over. People need to own their own stuff and get the money off of the sale of their own stuff rather than go through some mediating producer distributor company. And that's my focus is to continue to build up, kind of social media reputation, influences, so that when you release a book, you get more eyes on it, you get more sales, and make it so that it's bringing in income comparable to a job.
yeah.
But that's a long climb in this industry. It really is.
Well, you're going the right way. You're going the right way because you've got amazing products, and I've actually managed to stop on a page here, and this is what we were talking about earlier with
Yeah, so
the
yeah, you can just build out that mine and use the rules in the GM's Companion or in the ShadowDark core rules, and it tells you how many enemies are there. So you don't have to kind of roll that randomly, but you can roll up all the rooms and the
yeah.
pattern of the dungeon randomly, and then just go with it.
Yeah, and each location. So this is why it's so great for solo. So each location. So we've got these. What do you actually call them? I can't remember. I
Icons.
yeah, I was going to say I call them icons, but so and I run them in order of what's coming up. So this is like the weather in the area. This is any sort of key things that are going to happen, and then you obviously got random encounters, and then some of them will have like a mine or a dungeon. Then you've got like army and defenders, and I want to find a city. Here we go. This is, and what I love about the cities is the rumors as well that
Yep.
bring in because there isn't a plot, but there's a very big plot, if that makes sense. As in, it's all hidden. What's going on in the world is what I'm slowly defining, and obviously it's what you make of it yourself. But it's
Yeah, people have this horrible pattern historically of creating these huge info dumps on their players at the beginning of a campaign or whatever. And I'd much rather give them a little bit of information as a rumor and have them be curious about figuring out what that is,
yeah,
you know?
because you do that at the start, don't you? There's where is it? Here it is. Here's your base, not the basic stuff, isn't it? The kingdoms
Yeah.
talk very much. It's a loose idea of where they are in the world and what's going on.
Well, if you go to, I'm not sure of the page, but it's at the end of the green section here, is one of the starting towns. And yeah, there you go. There's one. If you go back to Bogoria, it's up a couple. There you go. And all the ones that have this colored border are the starting towns, and they've got a D20 rumor table. And in general, all the rumors are true in some respect,
Hmm.
but they can be pretty on target or they can be wildly wrong about a particular thing. And So if you read that you found out that there's pirate like entry number 8 there. There's a pirate town in Dagger Bay. It doesn't tell you where it is, and Dagger Bay is pretty big, 4 or 5 hex coastal area. There's a lot of places it could be down in Dagger Bay. Um, but if you think, okay, well, I
Yeah, yeah.
want to, yeah, I want to find this place. You're going to have to then go down there and dig around
Into all
and
the
find it.
hexes and
Yeah,
find it. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. This is why I. It really reminds me of those sort of choose your own adventure type books, but better, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Uh,
That's how I just described it last night on Eric's podcast. He was asking me, and I was like, it's like a choose your own adventure book or a lone wolf book, but with a
yeah,
Shadow Dark party.
yeah. I wish I'd
And
noticed this green border before. I hadn't noticed
yeah,
that.
well, one of the reasons why I don't have the POD active for this yet is that they sent me the soft cover. For all I know, the hardcover could be waiting for me when I get back from this vacation. But
Yeah,
they sent me the soft cover, and I could tell immediately that it was misprinted because the border for those pages was off. One side was completely white, and so they had cut it, printed the book wrong and cut it. Now I'm not sure
right.
if it's because of just the soft cover or if it'll be the same way in the hardcover. I checked my files; they're correct in how they did the bleed and everything, so I don't know why it's that way. But once I have the hardcover in my hand, I'm going to either approve it and have to go back to the drawing board on softcover, or I'm going to have to go back on both of them and be like, "Why are you cutting this wrong?" But the holding it in your hand is its own special thing. You just hate it when you get it and it's off.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. I wish I could approve it, but it's just not ready yet
No,
on their
it's
side.
I guess it's for you a bit of a pity that you managed to miss the hike for Drive Through RPG. Is that sort
Yeah.
of hit you hard, or now the
No,
prices are
it
out?
wasn't as big of a price increase as a lot of people thought it would be.
Okay.
And I've had, I think the GM Companion, the price of the softcover only went up by like a dollar 50. So it wasn't that bad. And I think some people are going to absorb it on their end. If you don't know, on the drive-through, there's kind of like a fixed cost that's the cost of the book itself,
Yeah.
so you can't discount that price. And then there's a kind of an upcharge or a flexible amount that you control. It's similar to like what you're charging for the PDF, right? So if you're charging $8 for a PDF, then your print cost would be $8 plus whatever the cost is of printing the book.
Yeah.
So you can cut down your side of the equation to accommodate the price increase, but I haven't seen a big enough price increase to really be worried about
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
that's good then. So we're just looking at Drive Through RPG. So that this is all of your products. Oh,
Y-
it,
Yeah.
it goes on, doesn't it?
Yeah, I have a couple products for Adventure Conquer King 2 that are on there, the Warlords of Gavardia and Mulyadi the Conqueror. Um, Acts 2 requires a lot more kind of commitment. It's a lot more of a grindy, crunchy game,
Yeah.
and so it hasn't been as successful as the Shadow Dark stuff. And if I'm going to put my energy and time into it, I'd rather it be something that resonates with people more. But I really love Adventure Conquer King. It's a great system. Um, I think my whole perspective on Shadow Dark is that if I want to play it rules light, that's what I want to play. If I want to play it crunchy, then I want to play Adventure Conquer King.
Yeah.
I had a very long campaign in my Saturday night group with Adventure Conquer King. It's a really great system and I love it. But you know, it, if people want me to write more Acts 2 stuff, buy more of the book. Show me that that's what you're interested in. Um, one of the things I think that this happens too much in our hobby is people would rather write something, do something their way to a limited number of people than make any concessions or adjustments to account for what the audience might be interested in.
Yeah,
Like there's people who hate running advantage disadvantage because of some personal thing that they have with it. And so they're not going to run this game, even if a huge number of people like advantage disadvantage.
yeah,
I think you have to be open-minded to that, and especially as a creative person, if the market likes a book with a larger font, then write a book with a larger font. That's just the way it is.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And if you are going to buy any of the books, then please use my affiliate link because it's I've got to try, haven't I?
Yeah,
I've got to
hey,
keep
you
mentioning it.
gotta beat those bushes.
It is. You make, it's nice. I'd say it's you've got a lot of stuff that I need to get in then, aren't I? So I'm guessing adventures here. Are these that's an
Yeah, that was
adventure.
a Sunless Fane was actually a one-page dungeon thing that I made a long time ago for a like a blogging thing.
Yeah,
And so I used the map of it as a basis and then just built it out as a ShadowDark adventure. This was back in 2023 when ShadowDark had just come out and people were like, I don't have anything to play with
yeah,
this. And so I was just like, well, I'll put that together. Novice Magic is a bunch of extra spells for the base book, right? And people weren't anywhere near as interested in extra spells as they were in extra classes and equipment. So that's where I ended up putting my focus. So that's the kind of thing. It's a good selling product. It's just I have limited time, so I focus on what people tell me that they really enjoy.
yeah, yeah. Well, you've got to, haven't you?
Yeah.
If you're doing it full time, you can take a few more risks and try and diversify a little bit. But if this is you're trying to build, you kind of want to try and maximize the profit off each product, really. What I want to sort of not end the interview with, if that makes sense. But so where are we going now? I know you've talked about Dark Sun. You're going to do an expansion for Dark Sun. Any sort of ideas on any of the other worlds for sort of
Yeah.
AD&D or?
Well, I have done a lot of work on an Al-Qadim conversion. I've sketched out a lot of outlining and stuff. I haven't actually turned it into hard writing yet, but a lot of the work is done conceptually before you even put pen to paper in that sense. I don't think I'm ready to yet go down that path because I've got some other things that I'm working on, but that is in my consideration. With Kelsey launching the Western Reaches, I've already taken the player companion and expanded out each section of equipment to make sure to add more stuff to make it so that when that does really drop, I can launch a big kind of not calling it this, but it would be like the Western Reaches companion,
Yeah,
um, and putting that together, and that's kind of doing that as more details come out. Come out with different solutions. You can see how she's making changes to the way ancestries work. Like if you look at her new half elf and some other things, so kind of updating the goals of the player companion to accommodate those new ideas that she's bringing in.
yeah,
And then I've also been putting most of my energy lately into a adaptation of I can only say Shadow Dark into a totally different genre. I'm not really ready yet to drop the full details on it. I haven't even disclosed it to my Saturday night group, which usually gets first dibs on everything, and I'm gonna pop on all on them as a surprise. But the thing that I think Shadow Dark's success really has brought out is that it in the way that her experience system works, in the way that carousing works, in the way that the numbers are calibrated to remain low, so that even at fourth level, you're still facing significant challenges every day.
Yeah.
Um, I'm I'm taking another genre of role-playing games that everyone will be familiar with, but that has a very long, slow, um, kind of social, political game, and turning that into something that is just full octane. Every second you're in danger of being killed. Um, and I can actually see the book on your shelf behind you. So if that people want to use that as a clue, I can see it in there. It's a very popular game, and I'm going to take it in the same way that ShadowDark takes 5e and distills it down, creates a faster, more deadly version of the experience that people coming from 5e are taking. It's going to take one of those books on that shelf behind you and turn it from a kind of complex, slow, political, emotional, social thing into a very fast action um, experience where no matter how powerful you get, you're still right on the edge of being killed the
You know,
next day. So,
you know,
yeah.
I'm not listening. No one else is listening. All anyone's doing is looking on my shelf to try and work out what it is.
Yes. I could see it stands out plain as day to me, but I know what I'm looking for. But yeah, I've commissioned art for it just yesterday.
Yeah.
Some custom art that I don't have. There's a lot of stock art that I have that I can use for it, but I still, it's unique enough that I need, specifically commissioned art. I've done that. I've got the framework for the book in place. I've got about maybe a third of it written at this
Yeah.
point. And for a while, people have been telling me to switch over to a Kickstarter. I know that that will be um, a double-edged sword. It'll be more revenue, but it'll also be a lot more demanding on the creator to manage and promote and do all that stuff. So I've been hesitant to do that for a while, but this is going to be kind of my big breakout into kickstarting and trying to bring it. You can't really run a Kickstarter when you don't have a reputation yet. So I think I have built up enough of a reputation that I could really get a lot of attention
Definitely,
on
definitely.
that Kickstarter.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's good. It's what it's designed for. That was the whole idea of Kickstarter, isn't it? It has been
Yeah.
sort of there are some big companies now that, just deliberately launch. Well, everyone deliberately launches, but they do I've said it again, launch their books on there, and some of the smaller publishers do sometimes feel like this is a little bit unfair because obviously, if you come up, it's a lot of it's timing. I cover quite a few Kickstarters that sadly never go anywhere because it's they just launch it in between two massive projects. At the
Yep.
moment we've got obviously Kelsey's project and the Alien. Alien's that's probably gonna break $2 million
Yep.
very, very
I
soon.
I love Alien. It's a
Yeah.
fantastic system. I've actually run it for work colleagues as a team building exercise, and people love it.
It's
It speaks to adults,
yeah.
it's good.
Yeah, yeah, it's the and well, I love the semi co-op element of it from board gaming. I'm that DM that throws out cursed items. So give me a chance to do over my colleagues on a cooperative board game. Love it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we
those
had
personal goals in Alien are brilliant. Now, I think I've probably guessed the game, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to wait till we stop recording and ask.
Yeah, you can wait till we stop recording
So
and I'll give
yeah.
you some clues, but
Yeah, yeah. And I think no, I won't say anything. But no, that's good. And Al Qadim, that is the Middle Eastern setting, isn't it?
that's
If I
right.
remember
Yeah.
from
The thing that
AD&D.
I've sketched out is creating it. The original Al-Qadim is very much just the Arabian Peninsula in a
Yeah,
sense. It's just focused on Arabia. And I get why a lot of people are hesitant to spread out from that. But there's so much richness and depth in the Islamic world, the medieval Islamic world, that you can tap into all the way up into the steppe. You know that there's all
Yeah,
kinds of different Persians and Syrians and um, all the way over to Cordoba in Spain. There's so much that you can pull on, and so I'm trying to create a situation where the race choices or ancestry choices are mostly, there will be some demi-humans, but mostly humans from very different cultures. You know, somebody born in Cordoba is going to be very different from somebody born in Baghdad. That's
yeah,
just the way it is. So having very different human choices, more of a human-centric campaign, makes that external stuff even more foreign and monstrous and magical and so on. And there's a lot to draw from Arabia, but there's it's way more than just Arabia. So, putting that together, having, steppe nomads and settled city people and desert raiders and all that kind of stuff spread across all of Islam, that's stuff that I'm bringing in. I'm a mapper as well, so I started with a map and I've, building ideas off the map. There's like a Mecca type holy city. There's an urban city that's more like Baghdad. There's spiritual places. They're more like what's in the Himalayas and northern India that was
yeah.
settled by Islam. So it's all kinds of stuff like that. There's so much to work with, and but like we've said several times before in this talk, there's just you have to make choices. And I have my energies on other things right now, but that's on my radar. It's just not actively being worked on right now.
Yeah, no, perfect. Any sort of time frames for your Kickstarter? Have you got to sort of
Well, my
give a
goal
quarter?
is I'm going to there's a convention in North Texas RPG Con in June that I'm going to. It's probably the biggest old school focused convention. Yeah, Gary Con's a big convention here, but it's spread out across fifth edition, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
Dragon Con is in Atlanta, where I am. It's more of a cosplay and kind of all sorts of universe, Star Wars, Firefly, all sorts of other IPs that are not medieval fantasy. There's uh, what's the one? Gen Con, which has kind of been taken over by Wizards of the Coast. So there, North Texas is really kind of the audience that I am most connected to. And I know quite a few people are going to be there, and I want to walk in there with a preliminary kind of print on demand proof of what I have at that moment, and then sit down with those guys and get their input and design on what it is. And then after North Texas, would be launching the Kickstarter and moving forward on that. There's a lot of new things for me. I want to make sure I talk to all these guys about their experience. Talk to Kelsey, talk to Black Lodge Games guys. I don't know if you watch their podcast. Yeah, talk to people that are there, old friends, and get everybody's opinion, and then put together a real good plan for making this a successful launch.
yeah. Oh no, no, mate. No, Black Lodge Games. They sent me the is it the oyster shucked
Shucked
oyster?
Oyster.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He sent me that, and I was like, ooh, boobies. So,
I'm gonna be playing in
uh,
Ginger Fraser's game. He's running a game of Shucked Oyster
wow.
at the con. I'm gonna get to play
Yeah.
him running it. So, I have the book. I haven't read it because I knew I was going to be in this game. So I don't want to
Yeah.
I don't want to
No,
read the content. Yeah.
I've started, and again, it's another one of those where I've gone. There's a lot in here. There's a lot more in here than I was expecting. For one location as well, it seems, really good. But again, I'll get my thoughts out when I get the camera on, and as you can imagine, as a dyslexic, it's a slower read for me. So
Well, it is
I've chosen rather an insane hobby to video
one of
sometimes.
the
But
things that they've really done well from watching their podcast, reading a little, looking at a book a little bit, is that it creates an iterative loop of gameplay. So like the oyster exists for a while and then gets burnt down, and then
Okay.
you restart the whole like it's like a cycle,
Yeah.
right? And each time it comes back, it can be different. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out at the table, and that's a different kind of pattern of play than we've seen in some other thing, an iterative loop. So what the decisions that you make in the first time that the thing's around might impact the second
Yeah.
iteration of it and stuff like that. It's a cool idea to play with.
Yeah, yeah. No, again, looking forward to it. There's so much, and I think like 2014 when fifth edition came out that really changed the hobby. Shadow Dark has done the same again, and love or hate the game, the system, the support and the third party content for it has been absolutely amazing. And I do love it when content creators send me stuff. They go, do you want to have a look at this? And I'm like, yeah, of course I do. You'd be a fool to say no. And then, I got sent one today, and I can't talk about it yet because the Kickstarter's coming up in a month, and it's 302 pages. And I was just like, wow, just having a quick flick through, and I'm like, I've got to get the camera on this, but then I've got I've got to get the camera on all these other things that are still
Yeah,
there, and then I've got all the stuff of my stuff that I want to talk about. So it's the job's really getting in the way
it's
of
a wealth of riches out here now with the
yeah.
internet, with print on demand. You can get people who would have never been able to get anything published in the 80s and 90s can now run their own entire operation
Yeah.
from print on demand. So it's a great time to be in role-playing games.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. So, sadly, Greg, we're gonna have to leave it there, but it means you can get back to your holiday. I've got to go and sit with my family and have dinner now. Make that sound like a
Oh,
horrible chore. It's not. It's
suffering.
yeah, yeah. Well, I say family. There's only two left in the house now,
Well, I'm about to go have lunch at a beachside
so
cafe, so I'll have to suffer through that as well.
yeah. Well, you enjoy the rest of your holiday, and hopefully, when you get back, you'll have the hard copy of Terror Invictus, so you
I hope
can.
so.
And if you ever want to send me anything to look at, that you're working on, by all means, do. I'm never going to say no. So if not, I'm going to buy it anyway. You're stuck in that wonderful thing. You don't have to send me anything because I'll part with my cash. So
I gamed the system.
yeah, yeah. No, brilliant. It's been really good having you on. And I'd love
Thank
to
you.
get you back. So, when you've got other stuff to talk about, if you want to come on, just, drop me a message. Well, you're
I'd
on
love
my,
to.
obviously, if you want to find Greg is, he's on my Discord, which I probably should say. And you got a bit of fame when you came in as well. You quite like that.
Yeah, it's
So,
weird. I'm not used to that. Like, you like go into a server and people, it's just a normal, welcome Greg Christopher to the server, and then a bunch of people are like, "Oh, wow, hey, what's going on?"
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, no, no, it's good. So keep up the great work. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank
I'm
you.
really looking forward to more stuff on, Shadow Sun, especially Terror Invictus. That is a good. I want to see the other two worlds. Al-Qadim, really exciting. And then when you get round to it, if you want to redo Curse of Strahd, I'm sure you will.
I've never been a Ravenloft fan as much
Right.
as some people have. I think you should focus on the things that you really,
Definitely.
that really speak to you. And there's a lot of people that love Ravenloft, and I totally encourage them
Yeah,
to go do it. You
yeah.
know.
I love Ravenoff up until the final encounter. But I'm not going to spoil that for anyone. But yeah, so thank you for being here. Obviously, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe to the channel. Find me on what am I on? I'm on X now. I keep calling it Twitter. Keep getting told it's called X. Finally, after 15 years, I've managed to get onto Twitter, X again. Facebook, got Discord, we've got Patreon. I've just almost completed a deal with an artist as well to come on my Patreon to actually do art on a weekly update and release, which is quite nice. So, and I'm trying to get on a couple of authors. Oh, no, I won't. But yeah, thank you for being here, Greg, and enjoy the rest of the holiday. And I'll speak with
Yeah,
you very soon.
happy to be here.
All
Thanks,
right.
guys.
Cheers.